The Deutsche Bank headquarters in Manhattan, that has processed billions in high-stakes political loans for over 2 decades, just received an emergency subpoena from federal prosecutors. Not because of routine compliance checks, not because of regulatory oversight. Special counsel Jack Smith said it himself during his sealed court filing. The bank possesses documentary evidence of systematic financial fraud that could send a sitting president to prison for decades. I'm Elizabeth Carter, and this is the story unfolding right now in federal courtrooms across America. Before we go any further, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell. Leave a comment below telling me whether you think banking records can actually take down a sitting president. Share this video with everyone you know, because what I'm about to show you is happening in real time and the implications are staggering. Here's what happened in the last 48 hours that nobody is talking about. Federal prosecutors working for Jack Smith's special counsel office have obtained internal Deutsche Bank communications spanning from 2014 to 2021 that show bank executives knew Donald Trump. Financial statements contained what one senior loan officer called massive and systematic overvaluations of assets. Translation: they knew he was lying about his wealth to get loans, and they approved them anyway. The smoking gun document surfaced during what sources describe as an emergency weekend session at the Southern District of New York. A forensic accounting analysis commissioned by Smith's team revealed that Trump inflated his net worth by an average of $2.3 billion across 7 years of loan applications. That is not a typo. $2.3 billion. Let that sink in. Think about the scale of that number. The entire annual budget of some states is smaller than the amount Trump allegedly inflated his wealth to secure financing from Deutsche Bank. We are not talking about rounding errors or aggressive valuations. We are talking about what federal prosecutors are now calling the most extensive banking fraud scheme involving a political figure in American history. Here's where it gets worse. The internal bank emails, now in federal custody, show that Deutsche Bank's private wealth division continued approving loans even after their own risk assessment team flagged Trump's applications as containing what they termed severe discrepancies. One email from a senior Deutsche Bank executive to the loan committee reads, "We all know the numbers don't add up, but the relationship is too valuable to lose." Translation: they knew it was fraud and they didn't care because the profits were too good to pass up. But wait. There's something they're not telling you about how this evidence surfaced. The breakthrough came when federal investigators cross-referenced Trump's Deutsche Bank loan applications with the financial statements he submitted to insurance companies for the same properties during the same time periods. The differences were so dramatic that one forensic accountant told prosecutors it looked like they were describing entirely different businesses. The Trump Tower penthouse that Trump claimed was worth $327 million on his Deutsche Bank application was valued at $98 million on his insurance filings for the exact same time period. The Mar-a-Lago property that appeared as $739 million in loan documents showed up as $128 million in insurance records. Property after property, loan after loan, the pattern was identical and undeniable. This isn't about politics, it's about math. And the math tells a story that even Trump's most skilled legal team cannot explain away. Federal prosecutors have spent months building what legal experts are calling an airtight case. The evidence includes not just the conflicting financial statements, but recorded phone calls between Trump Organization executives and Deutsche Bank officials, discussing what they euphemistically called creative accounting approaches. In one conversation, according to court filings, a Trump Organization CFO told a Deutsche Bank loan officer that property valuations were flexible depending on the purpose of the evaluation. Jack Smith's team moved with unprecedented speed once they obtained this evidence. Within 6 hours of receiving the Deutsche Bank documents, federal prosecutors filed sealed motions in 3 different federal courts. Legal experts who have reviewed similar cases say the speed of the prosecutorial response indicates they believe they have evidence strong enough to secure convictions on multiple felony counts. And this is where it becomes undeniable. Trump's characteristic silence on Truth Social lasted exactly 14 hours after the news broke. For a politician who typically responds to legal challenges within minutes, this delay spoke volumes to political observers monitoring the situation. When he finally posted, it was a single sentence: "The corrupt banks are now working with the corrupt prosecutors to interfere with the election." But the banks aren't talking about election interference. They're talking about fraud. And the federal prosecutors aren't talking about politics. They're talking about evidence. The lights stayed on all night at the special counsel's office in downtown Washington. Jack Smith's prosecution team worked through what sources describe as the most intensive evidence review session in the history of federal election cases. By 6 a.m. Eastern, they had made a decision that would change everything. The emergency grand jury recall happened faster than anyone expected. Within 12 hours of receiving the Deutsche Bank documents, federal prosecutors had 23 grand jurors back in the secure courthouse facility, reviewing what legal experts are calling the most damning financial evidence ever compiled against a sitting president. Grand jury proceedings are secret, but sources familiar with the testimony say witnesses included 3 Deutsche Bank executives, 2 forensic accountants, and what prosecutors described as a cooperating witness from inside the Trump organization. Think about that for a moment. Someone from Trump's inner circle is now working with federal prosecutors. Trump's legal team found out about the grand jury recall the same way the rest of us did, through media reports. Legal sources say Trump's attorneys were caught completely off guard, with emergency meetings called at Mar-a-Lago that lasted past midnight. One Trump attorney, speaking on condition of anonymity, told reporters, "We knew this was coming eventually, but the speed caught everyone by surprise. The evidence must be extremely compelling for them to move this fast." Translation: even Trump's own lawyers think the case against him is stronger than they expected. But here's what nobody is saying out loud. Congressional Democrats didn't wait for the legal process to unfold. House Oversight Committee Chair Jamie Raskin announced emergency hearings within hours of the Deutsche Bank news breaking. Raskin told reporters, "The American people deserve to know if their president committed massive banking fraud to finance his political career. We will subpoena every document, every email, every phone record related to these transactions." The political domino effect started immediately. First domino: House Democrats demand all Trump banking records from the last decade. Second domino: 3 Republican senators issue statements calling for transparency and cooperation with federal investigators. Third domino: Senate Republican leadership schedules what they're calling a caucus meeting to discuss the developing situation. Translation: even Republicans are starting to distance themselves from Trump as the evidence mounts. Federal judges across 3 jurisdictions moved to expedited review schedules for all Trump-related cases. Judge Tanya Chutkan in Washington, Judge Eileen Cannon in Florida, and Judge Juan Merchan in New York all received emergency filings from Smith's team requesting accelerated timelines. Legal analysts say this level of judicial coordination is unprecedented and suggests prosecutors believe they have evidence requiring immediate action. The media response tells you everything you need to know about how serious this is. CNN cancelled regular programming to provide continuous coverage. MSNBC brought in their top legal analysts for extended segments. Even Fox News, typically supportive of Trump, acknowledged that the Deutsche Bank documents represent what anchor Brett Baier called a significant legal development that cannot be ignored. Here's where it gets even more dramatic. Republican leadership is starting to fracture in ways we haven't seen since the early days of the January 6th investigation. Senator Susan Collins told reporters, "We must let the legal process run its course without political interference." Senator Lisa Murkowski said, "Banking fraud is a serious crime regardless of who commits it." Senator Mitt Romney went further. "If these allegations prove true, it represents a fundamental betrayal of public trust." That is 3 Republican senators essentially abandoning Trump's standard defense of calling everything a witch hunt. The financial markets reacted exactly as you would expect when a sitting president faces credible fraud allegations. Trump Media and Technology Group stock dropped 18% in after-hours trading. Deutsche Bank shares fell 7% on European markets before trading was suspended. Legal experts say market reactions often predict legal outcomes better than political polling, because investors are betting real money on real consequences. But wait, there's something they're not telling you about the Secret Service coordination meetings. Federal marshals and Secret Service personnel held what sources describe as unprecedented planning sessions to discuss protocols for potential federal law enforcement actions involving a sitting president. These meetings, which typically would remain classified, were confirmed by two separate law enforcement sources who spoke on condition of anonymity. Translation: Federal law enforcement is preparing for scenarios they've never had to consider before. Jack Smith's team isn't just building a case. They're building what prosecutors call a prosecutorial machine designed to handle the most complex white-collar fraud case in American political history. The Special Counsel's Office has expanded to include 16 prosecutors, 12 FBI agents, and 6 forensic accountants working in shifts around the clock. Sources say they're preparing indictments on multiple charges including bank fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and what legal experts describe as novel applications of existing financial crime statutes. The Trump Organization is hemorrhaging employees and legal representation. 2 more attorneys withdrew from Trump's legal team, citing what they called irreconcilable differences with their client's legal strategy. 3 Trump Organization executives hired separate criminal defense attorneys, including Chief Financial Officer Alan Weisselberg, who sources say has been cooperating with federal investigators for months. And it gets worse. European banking regulators announced they are reviewing all Trump-related transactions processed through European financial institutions over the last decade. The German Federal Financial Supervisory Authority issued what they called a formal inquiry into Deutsche Bank's compliance with international banking fraud prevention protocols. British financial regulators opened similar investigations into London-based institutions that process Trump Organization transactions. Translation: This is becoming an international banking fraud investigation, with implications far beyond American politics. Here's the accountability question I want you to answer in the comments. Do you think a sitting president should be subject to the same fraud laws as everyone else? Yes or no? Because what happens next will determine whether America truly believes no one is above the law, or whether political power provides immunity from criminal consequences for financial crimes that would send any other American to prison for decades. Deutsche Bank made the decision that sent shockwaves through the financial world at 9:47 a.m. Eastern Time. All Trump Organization accounts, totaling what sources estimate at over $340 million in active credit lines, were immediately frozen pending what the bank called a comprehensive review of account compliance with federal banking regulations. Translation: Deutsche Bank is cutting ties with Trump to avoid becoming a co-conspirator in a federal fraud investigation. The bank's internal memo, leaked to financial reporters within hours, was brutally direct. Senior management wrote, "Given the ongoing federal investigation and the potential legal exposure for the institution, we are implementing immediate risk mitigation protocols for all accounts associated with the Trump Organization and related entities. All credit facilities are suspended effective immediately." Let that sink in. The bank that enabled Trump's financial empire for over a decade just pulled the plug in a single morning. But the banking crisis was just the beginning. House Oversight Committee Chair Jamie Raskin signed subpoenas demanding every document related to Trump's banking relationships going back 15 years. The subpoenas, served simultaneously on Deutsche Bank, Capital One, and Mazars accounting firm, represent what legal experts call the most comprehensive financial document request ever issued by Congress regarding a sitting president. Raskin told reporters, "We're not just looking at Deutsche Bank. We're looking at every financial institution that processed Trump Organization transactions, every accounting firm that prepared financial statements, every insurance company that issued policies based on those statements. This is a full-spectrum investigation into systematic financial fraud. The Department of Justice moved with unprecedented coordination. Jack Smith's team established what prosecutors call a joint task force with New York Attorney General Letitia James's office, combining federal criminal authority with state civil enforcement powers. The collaboration means Trump faces simultaneous federal criminal charges and state civil penalties that could total over $1 billion in damages. Think about that. Even if Trump somehow avoided federal prison, the state civil case could financially destroy his business empire entirely. Trump's response came in the form of a Truth Social explosion that lasted 4 hours and included 17 separate posts. The posts, which legal experts say could be used as evidence of consciousness of guilt, attacked what Trump called corrupt banks working with corrupt prosecutors to stage a political coup against the American people. One post read, "Deutsche Bank made billions from my deals, and now they want to pretend they're victims. This is election interference at the highest level." Translation: Trump just admitted in writing that Deutsche Bank profited from transactions that federal prosecutors are calling fraudulent. The political earthquake hit Capitol Hill exactly as predicted. Senator Chuck Grassley, typically a Trump defender, issued a statement calling for full cooperation with federal investigators. Senator John Cornyn told reporters, "Banking fraud is not a political issue, it's a legal issue that must be resolved through proper legal channels." Senator Thom Tillis went further. "If these allegations prove true, it represents conduct unbecoming of any public official, regardless of party affiliation." That is 3 more Republican senators essentially abandoning Trump's political defense strategy. The legal team exodus accelerated into what sources describe as a full-scale abandonment. Todd Blanche, Trump's lead attorney in multiple cases, filed motions to withdraw, citing what legal documents described as irreconcilable differences regarding legal strategy and client cooperation. Alina Habba, Trump's attorney in the civil fraud case, submitted similar withdrawal motions. 2 additional attorneys from Trump's legal team withdrew representation in what their filings called an untenable professional situation. Translation: Trump's lawyers think he's guilty, and they don't want to be associated with his defense. But here's what nobody is saying out loud about the Secret Service situation. Federal marshals held what sources describe as extraordinary coordination meetings with Secret Service leadership to establish protocols for potential law enforcement actions involving presidential protection details. These meetings, confirmed by 3 separate law enforcement sources, focused on scenarios that have never been tested in American history. The implications are staggering. Federal law enforcement is actively planning for the possibility of arresting a sitting president. The international banking scandal spread faster than anyone anticipated. Swiss banking regulators announced investigations into Credit Suisse transactions involving Trump Organization entities. The United Kingdom's Financial Conduct Authority opened formal inquiries into London-based institutions that processed Trump-related wire transfers. The European Central Bank issued guidance to all member institutions regarding enhanced due diligence for politically exposed persons from the United States. Translation: Trump's banking fraud investigation is becoming a global financial compliance crisis. Allen Weisselberg's sealed testimony leaked in devastating detail. The former Trump Organization chief financial officer told federal prosecutors that inflating asset values for loan applications while deflating them for tax purposes was what he called standard operating procedure that occurred with Trump's full knowledge and explicit approval. Weisselberg testified, "Donald knew exactly what we were doing. He would often tell us to be more aggressive with the valuations because he said the banks would never check." That is direct testimony from Trump's most trusted financial executive, implicating him in systematic fraud. The Trump family dynamics reached a breaking point behind closed doors. Sources close to the family say Melania Trump has retained separate legal counsel and is considering what advisors describe as personal legal protection strategies. Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump hired criminal defense attorneys after prosecutors indicated they could face individual charges related to their roles in preparing fraudulent financial statements. The stock market carnage continued for a second straight day. Trump Media and Technology Group lost another 22% of its value. Deutsche Bank shares fell an additional 12% before European regulators suspended trading. Legal analysts say the market is pricing in the probability of Trump's conviction and the complete collapse of his business empire. Federal judges moved to emergency scheduling protocols across multiple jurisdictions. Judge Tanya Chutkan scheduled expedited hearings for all Trump-related federal cases. Judge Arthur Engoron in New York coordinated with federal prosecutors to prevent conflicting legal actions. Judge Arlene Cannon, despite previous rulings favorable to Trump, acknowledged that the new evidence requires immediate judicial review. Here's where it becomes undeniable. Republican leadership scheduled what sources call crisis meetings to discuss what they're privately calling the Trump situation. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell told Republican senators in a closed-door meeting, "We need to prepare for multiple scenarios, including scenarios where the former president is not available to campaign." Translation: Republican leaders are planning for Trump's political career to end in federal prison. The prosecutorial machine that Jack Smith built is now operating at full capacity with resources that dwarf any previous special counsel investigation. The team includes specialists in international banking fraud, forensic accountants who worked on major corporate fraud cases, and prosecutors with experience in organized crime financial investigations. And it gets worse. The evidence keeps coming. Every day brings new revelations, new documents, new testimony from former Trump Organization employees who are cooperating with federal investigators to avoid their own criminal liability. This isn't about politics anymore. It's about whether American justice system can function when the stakes are this high and the defendant this powerful. The grand jury delivered their decision at 2:34 p.m. Eastern Time on a Tuesday that will be remembered in American history. 23 citizens voted unanimously to indict Donald John Trump on 14 federal charges including bank fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and what prosecutors described as the largest systematic financial deception ever perpetrated by an elected official. Jack Smith's press conference lasted exactly 11 minutes and changed everything. Standing at the podium in the Department of Justice headquarters, Smith delivered what legal historians are already calling the most consequential statement by a federal prosecutor in American history. His words were measured and devastating. No one is above the law, not the wealthy, not the powerful, not even the President of the United States. Today, a federal grand jury has determined that there is probable cause to believe that Donald Trump committed serious federal crimes related to systematic banking fraud spanning nearly a decade. Let that sink in. The special counsel just announced that a sitting president will face federal criminal trial for fraud. Trump's response came within 17 minutes and shattered every norm of presidential conduct. Instead of surrendering as requested by federal authorities, Trump posted on Truth Social, "I will not be surrendering to this corrupt witch hunt. This is election interference and a political coup by the deep state. I am the rightfully elected president, and I will continue to serve the American people despite this unprecedented attack on democracy." Translation: Trump is defying federal law enforcement and refusing to comply with a federal indictment. The constitutional crisis that legal scholars have warned about for years arrived in real time. Constitutional law professors across the country appeared on emergency news broadcasts, explaining that America has entered completely uncharted legal territory. Harvard law professor Lawrence Tribe told CNN, "We are witnessing a direct confrontation between federal law enforcement and presidential power that the Constitution never contemplated and the founders never imagined." The Department of Justice moved immediately to address Trump's defiance. Within 2 hours of his Truth Social posts, federal prosecutors filed emergency motions with Judge Tanya Chutkan, requesting what legal documents called extraordinary enforcement measures for compliance with federal criminal process. The motion, unprecedented in American legal history, essentially asked a federal judge to order the arrest of a sitting president. Federal marshals received activation orders that have never been issued before in American history. The United States Marshals Service, in coordination with the Secret Service, began implementing what sources describe as protocols for law enforcement actions involving a president who is refusing to cooperate with federal criminal proceedings. Think about what that means. Federal law enforcement is preparing to arrest the President of the United States. Capitol Hill erupted into chaos that surpassed even the January 6th riots. House Republicans immediately moved to impeach Jack Smith, filing articles of impeachment that accused the special counsel of conducting a political prosecution designed to interfere with American elections. House Speaker Mike Johnson called an emergency session and declared, "This is not justice. This is a coup attempt by unelected bureaucrats who want to overturn the will of the American people." But Senate Republicans broke ranks in unprecedented fashion. Senator Mitch McConnell issued a statement that stunned political observers. "The rule of law is the foundation of our constitutional republic. Federal criminal charges must be addressed through our legal system, not through political rhetoric." Senator John Thune went further. "No American, regardless of position, is immune from federal criminal law." The military issued a statement that sent shockwaves through Washington.